great pleasure for me today to be here with my other co-chair organizations of the IBC on environment and climate change. Also with IBC members overall, as well as RCs and members of UN country teams for this first technical webinar offered by the newly established IBC. Thank you all for being with us today for the presentation and exchange on the 2020 World Water Development Report on Water and Climate Change. For our invited guests today that will be speaking and presenting the report, let me begin by introducing briefly the IBC and its work. The interagency IBC on environment and climate change is led by UNEP, UNECE, and UNESCO, and has 18 members from across the UN family, funds, agencies, and programs. The three main points, which I'm going to summarize, we could speak, we've had discussions about the IBC, but the three main points that I'd like to highlight for all of us is that the IBC is to provide a regional platform for UN agencies. It is to promote a coordinated support to all member states in Europe and Central Asia in their implementation of the 2030 Agenda. And most importantly, to support UN country teams in Europe and Central Asia on environmental and climate change issues. In the challenging times that we are living here today, it is also important not to lose sight of the key challenges that had been in the UN system priorities just 4 months ago. And water and climate change are two of the most important ones. Water is a transversal issue throughout the SDGs, in addition to having a specific SDG 6 dedicated to it. Indeed, water is key to confronting poverty, hunger, health issues, as illustrated during this pandemic. It is also closely linked to climate change, as we will see in today's presentations. Climate change is still the defining issue of our time. RCs from the region also recently chose water and climate change as two of the main issues that they would like the IBC on environment and climate change to focus in their work, which makes today's webinar extremely relevant and timely. We are very lucky to have among us today Shamila Nair Badwal, Assistant Director General for the Natural Sciences of UNESCO, as well as Orçay Unver, Vice Chair of UN Water. They will be both participating in the introductory section, as you will have seen from the agenda that was distributed to you and that I hope you have received and have access to. You will also see that we have two presentations on the report itself from colleagues at UNESCO's World Water Assessment Program and UNECE from a global and regional perspective. Finally, Irina Solorano, that you all know very well, Director of DCO, UNDCO for Europe and Central Asia, will moderate a discussion with resident coordinators and UNCT members from the region. And this will be an opportunity for IBC members and experts that we have here today, specifically on water issues from the UN Water family, to intervene and exchange with the RCs and members of the UN country teams on how to best use the report at the national level. Supporting the RCs and the UN country teams with evidence-based tools on the environment and climate change is the key priority of this IBC. So I look forward to a spirited and exciting discussion. Now, at this point, I would like to say that we will have a message from Olga Algaguerva, Executive Secretary from one of the IBC's co-chair organizations, then to be followed by some words also from my other co-chair, Bruno Maggi Pozzi, Director of the Europe Office of UNESCO. So thank you very much. and let it begin. So please, if we could have Olga's video message, I would very much appreciate it.
Good morning, good afternoon, dear colleagues, and welcome. This webinar being held within the framework of the new issue-based coalition on environment and climate change. The coalition is the largest in terms of membership. 18 agencies, many of them present today, have joined forces to provide coordinated support to the UN country teams on environmental and climate change issues. In my capacity as co-chair of the regional UN system meeting, I wish to express the full support of the organization for this effort. The webinar is the coalition's first event aimed at supporting the development of substantive capacities. It's therefore fitting that it addresses one of the key environmental concerns in the region, and especially in the program countries, as confirmed by a survey of resident coordinators, water and climate change. I would like to express my sincere appreciation to the co-chairs of the coalition for launching this activity, and especially to Shamila Nair-Beduel, Assistant Director General for Natural Sciences at UNESCO, and Olcay Unver, Vice Chair of UN Water, for leading the webinar. Their presence demonstrates the full backing of the United Nations system for this landmark World Water Development Report. It is, of course, a pleasure to see the contribution of my Water Convention colleagues, given their long engagement in adaptation to climate change in transboundary water basins in the region. My thanks go also to Engin Konjagoğlu, who, as head of the UNESCO World Water Assessment Program, leads the production of the annual World Water Development Report. I'm therefore confident that you will find the webinar interesting. In addition, I hope that you'll find the report's important message useful and timely for supporting member states. Thank you.
Bruno, are you still online?
I'm still online. I was waiting for a go ahead, but
oh, I'm sorry. I just realized that I was mute before. Sorry.
Okay.
My apologies.
No
Thank
worries.
you.
Good. These are the smaller hiccups that we're all getting used to and smiling at after what is it? 12 weeks now of webinars and other online meetings. But really, thanks a lot for giving me the floor and the opportunity to give just a few words, because I think what I wanted to say has been said already. We know that climate change is the challenge of our time. Of course, we're facing this COVID period, but the challenge of our time will stay and will be climate change. And if there's anything that nature has sent us as signal, is that we need to respect it and we need to live in better relation with our ecosystems. And COVID is a signal that when we abuse, we are punished in a way. But I'm thrilled to be there because, as was said as well, this IBC is a new tool of the UN system in our region, and a tool that has gathered so many agencies around the issue of the 21st century, and the centrality of climate change and environment issues in our multilateral agenda is therefore demonstrated. And it is our common effort to bring an answer to build this better world and to make sure that no one is left behind. And in this access to water, the issue of water is also essential. This is life, and this is really what we are working for at the end. I think all UN civil servants have got a part of a utopian dream that we will do something for the future of our planet and the future of our societies. And therefore, we need to preserve this natural resource, which is at the center of our life. So thanks a lot again, and I'll give back the word to Ana Luisa.
Okay, thank you. I know our technical challenges, I have to say, at least it dates me. Weeks and months go by and I still have challenges with both. But anyway, so thank you very much. And on this note, I'd like to ask the Assistant Director General for Natural Sciences to provide her introductory remarks and to express the co-chairs real appreciation for her time. I know how busy her schedule is. I know the number of meetings she's booked into. So thank you very much, Shamila, to being with us today.
Thank you very much, Ana Luisa. You can see me? You can hear me? This okay?
We can see you and we can hear you.
Thank you. You can see I put my dress on from your region to demonstrate the solidarity with all of you. So good morning to all of you, and on behalf of UNESCO, I would really like to thank especially Olga. It's a pleasure to see you again, Olga, and I do hope we'll have an opportunity to meet you in person very soon. I would like to thank Irina Wojciakova-Solorano, the Director of UNDCO for Europe and Central Asia, and I want to thank all of you, the resident coordinators and heads, the UNCT members, from the region for having organized and participating in today's webinar. None of this would be possible without the role of each and every one of you UN agencies who are members of the UN Water family. However, my special thanks goes to Olcha Unver, who is the Vice Chair of the UN Water, and we are really delighted with this UN-wide example of collaboration at global level to ensure that water is accessible to all of us. I want to really sincerely thank Annalisa Flores-Thompson from the regional office, who's done a great work of bringing us all here together. Thank you very much. As the Director of Regional Bureau for Science and Culture, it's very important that we valorize the science of water and the culture of water today. So it's very pertinent that you bring us all here together. So thank you very much. And I'd like to thank the colleagues from the World Water Assessment Program who have been leading this report. Engen, as you mentioned, as well as the contributions from Michaela Mileto, who is the Director OIC right now, Abu Amani, and all the multitude of agencies who have contributed to making a very successful report of water and climate change. We have seen during this pandemic how important water and sanitation are in containing the pandemic. Water and sanitation, from the simple gesture of washing our hands, as well as role for water in hospitals, households, as well as in schools. However, we have also seen that this pandemic is putting an increasing pressure on the water resources. Now, the report has demonstrated, this World Water Development Report, bringing together the multitude of partnerships across the world, has demonstrated that an integrated water resource management is essential and can provide the water solutions to tackle the challenge of climate change. We also will be seeing in the future how this integrated water management and a systems approach is so essential, not only for building back a new norm after the COVID, but in the months and years as we are tackling the COVID. So resident coordinators and the UNCTs, as you are in the process of structuring both a short-term and a longer-term socio-economic response to the pandemic for the region, water really should be crucial and integral to any of the responses that we would see for the region. Water is an enabler for all of the SDGs. And so understanding the link between water and climate change, and notably in the context of the COVID, which brings it all together very, very nicely, is really important to the work in the region. Now, we have seen that food security, human health, rural settlements, energy production, thriving ecosystems all depend on the impact of climate change. But they're also vulnerable to water scarcity and water management. And climate change will affect both the availability, the quantity, the quality of water for basic human needs, and will threaten basic human rights to water and sanitation. So we do see that in this particular report and this huge collaboration with the UN family, it is a call for urgent action because it addresses the critical linkages between water and climate change in the context of the broader sustainable agenda, not only for this region, but across the world. And we have noticed that mitigation and adaptation in one sector can directly influence or directly influence the water demand in other sectors. Hence, this systems approach, as I mentioned earlier, is very, very important. The report focuses on challenges and opportunities and potential responses to climate change in terms of adaptation and mitigation, and how this can also be tackled by enhancing water resource management. So we have noticed in the report that improving access to water supply and sanitation services in a sustainable manner is extremely crucial for sustainable development. Now, I would like to just go over a couple of ideas which come out of the report, and Engen will go into details of this later on. What are the key impacts from the report for Europe and for Central Asia? And what are the lessons learned? We have seen that Europe can be divided into a Northern Europe and a Southern Europe. Northern Europe may experience increased precipitation in the future. Southern Europe, decreased precipitation. There could be increase in high temperature extremes and variations across Europe, but the uncertainty is higher in Central Asia. Although we do see some trends in terms of precipitation patterns and droughts, there will in any case be an increased variability. So these climatic changes across Europe and Central Asia will introduce new types of challenges for irrigation, hydropower generation, ecosystems, human settlements, and hence sustainable development challenges for Europe and Central Asia. And it is estimated that this climate change variation, the intensity of extreme events, storms, floods, droughts, we experience high temperatures in Europe as well, will result in countries which are already water stressed, face different forms of water stress. Countries which were not affected will now become severely affected. And this World Water Development Report also highlights the fact that poor water management tends to exacerbate the impacts of climate change. So this therefore calls for an integrated water management. And how do we understand integrated water management for Central Asia and the Caucasus region? Well, we have understood that an enhanced resilience for the region actually needs enhancing monitoring and data sharing on the water quality, on the water quantity, and really the coherence of climate change adaptation and water-related disaster risk reduction. And throughout this region, we would need to see improving water efficiency as crucial for sustainable development. We have seen that water is an international climate connector. And here I would like to highlight the difficulties, political difficulties that one can face in water management in transboundary basins. And the region is rich in transboundary basins. But we have also seen that water management can be a connector and an international climate connector in the region. The good example in terms of collaboration have been experienced in the Danube River Basin with the Commission, which led water and climate integration. We also have other cases, such as the cooperation between countries in the Dniester River, between Ukraine and Moldova. But the World Water Report also not just aims to raise awareness on these crucial links in transboundary cooperation, the link between climate and climate mitigation and integrated water resource management, but it also invites governments to raise awareness for concrete actions on the ground. The World Water Report translates the science of water management into policies on the ground. So resident coordinators and the UNCT teams have a critical role to play in assisting countries and governments to translate the findings of the World Water Development Report into actual concrete actions on the ground. And we understand that the region has designated water and climate change as priorities. And for this, one would need data and evidence to assist countries. And the World Water Report does just that. It provides evidence-based actions at the national level, at the regional level, to national authorities and regional authorities. Now, before I conclude, and I would like to just raise awareness also, not only of the UN water family, within which UNESCO is a very privileged partner, and we thank you all for that as well. But I also would like to raise awareness for UNESCO's water family, which is open to all of you. And we would like to call upon you to join this water family and access the tools which are being developed by the UNESCO's water family of 36 UNESCO water designated institutes across the world. These are very highly specialized water research institutes with regional and global coverage. We also have over 60 UNESCO water chairs who are based in universities undertaking research in water. We are also home, this is your home, the Intergovernmental Hydrology Program, which covers 193 countries and 169 national committees in countries across the world, which is a perfect way of parachuting and entering countries to be able to ensure that water research, water resource management, education, and capacity building can be reached to all countries across the world. Strengthening the science policy dialogue is really important, and we seek to promote the water cooperation through this extensive water family across the world. Now, the tools we have developed are also very important to your region. For example, we've developed a tool right now to understand glacier melting in mountainous areas, and this mapping will be very important and useful due to climate change for this particular region. So understanding the decreasing trend and receding glaciers is very important to understanding water and climate change impact also for Central Asia and the Caucasus region. Another tool which we believe is extremely important for the region is the water sex disaggregated tool in order to mainstream gender in water management. We believe that water gender equality is extremely important in management of water resources. All these expertise accumulated of some 3,000 experts across the world really are at your disposal to enable you as resident coordinators and UN country teams to access all of these. This is fully available to all of you. The report aims at helping the water community to tackle the challenges of climate change, and the report aims at informing the climate change community about the opportunities that an improved water management offers in terms of adaptation and mitigation. Climate change is affecting and will continue to affect our societies, mainly through water. So this particular report is really at your disposal. We look forward to working with you. And as I say, we are delighted to be part of this platform. Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting us to be part of this initiative. Thank you very much.
Shamila, thank you very, very much for this introduction. And if I may, I noticed that on different occasions you highlighted integration. Integration is being essential, not only in water management, but in the transboundary issues. So if I could pick one word, if you allow me from your introduction, I think the highlighting of the integration in all the initiatives that we take is very important. I also would like to mention how important it is for us in the IBC, and here, if I may, I will also speak for my other co-chairs, and I would assume also for the RCs and the UN country teams who are listening to us at this point, is thank you for highlighting the incredible resource available between the chairs, the tools, the data. This is very important, and sometimes I confess, being part of the UNESCO family, I sort of take it for granted. So thank you very much for highlighting that, and I can tell you that from the IBC, we'll make sure that we can try to link all of that so that the RCs, which are our first clients, if I may use that word, can have easy access to all that information that is spread worldwide, and in particular for those that are here today, for those focused on the region, which will of course will be elaborated later on. And on this note, it is also with great pleasure that I introduce Unçay Unver, Vice Chair of World Water. And thank you also for being with us. Thank you for your time. Thank you for also participating in this webinar, and particularly for your introductory remarks. Very much appreciated. Thank you. So please come in.
Good morning. You hear?
We could see you and we could hear you before.
Excellent.
Now.
Excellent. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, as the Vice Chair of UN Water, it's my great pleasure to be with you today in what is becoming the new format, a new normal, a webinar. It's impressive to see how many important discussions continue to take place and how quickly we are all adapting. On behalf of UN Water, I'd like to start by thanking our members UNESCO and UNECE, as well as UNDCO for Europe and Central Asia for organizing this conversation. I would also like to thank the World Water Assessment Program of UNESCO and my colleagues at the Secretariat for their dedication to the quality and timely production of the World Water Development Reports, which are a concrete outcome of collaboration of our members and partners, and an excellent example of the UN system delivering as one. The report is very close to my heart personally too, as I was Today's topic, water and climate change, is a priority theme for UN Water. Indeed, we have a dedicated expert group that brings together more than 30 UN entities and international organizations. The group has worked over the last 10 years to facilitate a common voice on water and climate change. Today's organizers, UNECE and UNESCO, are instrumental in coordinating the group's work together with WMO. For the past 18 months, we have shined a particularly strong spotlight on this theme. In mid-2019, the expert group updated the thematic UN Water Policy Brief, and in 2020, this challenge was also the focus for one of our global World Water Day campaigns. Finally, based on the water and climate change work done by the members and partners of UN Water, UNESCO's World Water Assessment Program coordinated the production of our UN World Water Development Report, which is published by UNESCO on behalf of UN Water. Today, we are here to discuss the outcomes and recommendations of the report. Dear friends, recently we have seen how COVID-19 has stopped the world in its tracks. We have also seen that our ability to protect ourselves against the virus is far from equal. Right now, good hygiene is part of our best defense, but 3 billion people still lack even basic hand washing facilities at home. How do you clean your hands and keep your family safe when you don't have a reliable water supply, a decent toilet, or even soap? The consequences of the chronic underinvestment in water and sanitation services are abundantly clear. But there is perhaps light in the tunnel. As we get on top of the pandemic, we also have the opportunity to build back, and sanitation do not only build better, healthier, and more stable societies, they build hope and allow people and nature to thrive together in harmony. We can anticipate that resources will be increasingly scarce as a global recession affects us all, and so critical emergency interventions must be paired with longer-term investments for preparedness and resilience. For example, by addressing the relationship between water and climate change. As resident coordinators and part of UN country teams, I'm sure you have seen how climate change has serious impacts on water and sanitation in the countries where you serve. More floods, more droughts, more unreliability injected into the system. We like to emphasize that water is the medium through which the effects of climate change are mostly felt. However, when we released this year's edition of the UN World Water Development Report, it was with the intention to also position water and sanitation as solutions, not only threats. Protecting carbon sinks, adopting climate-smart agriculture, reusing wastewater. These are all some of the water solutions to address climate change. It is our hope that the report will provide you with more tools and advice for your support to the UN member states that you serve. Right now, the United Nations reform is transforming the way we work together, and this is also why you received in December last year UN Water's extended offer to resident coordinators and UN country teams. We want to support your technical, analytical, and awareness-raising work, and it's our hope that our assistance could strengthen the common country analysis and the development of the UN Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework. We are currently working with a few countries to assess needs and opportunities and look forward to continuing this work with you and colleagues to help accelerate progress on SDG 6 and the 2030 agenda at large. With those words, I would like to conclude. I'm delighted that we are having this conversation today, and thank you for your attention. I look forward to following the deliberations today. Thank you.
Thank you, Orçay, very much for in such a succinct way describing such complex work and collaboration among so many of the UN family. I also like to highlight in your intervention a point that you raised, which I thought was extremely important, apart from obviously the report and what the report provides and gives, but the UN Water's extended offer to the RCs and the country teams. I think this is an important, very important tool that we have to highlight also in this event, because the RCs are here, so to note that this is available to them as a point of assistance and reference. So thank you very much to both our stars on the introductory part. And now I would like to move to the presentation of the report itself. And I would like to pass the word to Engin Kongakul from the UNESCO World Water Assessment Program, a colleague from Perugia, who will be speaking de facto on the 2020 World Water Development Report on Water and Climate Change. So, Engin, please come in. Thank you.
Yes, Anna-Luisa, thank you very much for this introduction. And first of all, I would like to wish all the speakers and the audience a very good morning. I hope that you are all staying safe and keeping well during this global pandemic, which is affecting our societies wherever we live. Now, just to introduce myself, my name is Engin Kongakul, and I am the process coordinator for the production of the World Water Development Report series. And today, I will make a brief presentation focusing on the findings of the 2020 edition of the World Water Development Report, which was launched recently, very recently, in March on the World Water Day. And this report, this particular report, is looking at the theme of water and climate change. Now, I will turn my video off and share my screen with you so that hopefully the quality of the video stream is improved. Okay, this is the one, and let me maximize. Very good. As the previous speakers highlighted, the World Water Development Report is the flagship publication of the UN system on water and sanitation issues. And the report is published by UNESCO on behalf of UN Water, and its production is coordinated by my secretariat, the UNESCO World Water Assessment Program. And the 2020 edition of this report is the result of fruitful collaboration with a number of UN agencies and entities. In fact, now you see their logos on the slide. And before I move further, I would like to thank the Italian donor, the government of Italy and the Umbria region, which have been funding the World Water Assessment Program since 2007. And without their financial support and logistical support, preparing the World Water Development Report series would not have been possible. Now, when we look at the global trends, we see that water use has increased approximately 6 times over the past 100 years and continues to grow steadily at a rate of around 1% per year due to increasing population, economic development in all regions, and shifting consumption patterns. And because of this higher demand for water, those scarce resources are already under severe pressure in many regions of the world. And the climate change will only add to existing challenges by, of course, affecting the availability, quality, and quantity of water for our needs, and will also amplify water-related extremes such as floods and drought. And all these combined, climate change clearly threatens for potentially billions of people access to water and access to sanitation, which are among basic human rights. So when we talk about climate change, in fact, what we need to keep in mind is that human well-being is under growing risk. Now, to curb the climate change, adaptation and mitigation are both complementary strategies. In water domain, an example of adaptation is to improve the water-related infrastructure to better manage the risk of floods and droughts. In other words, big fluctuations in water availability. And such infrastructure includes dams. So there is the need to reassess the safety and sustainability of those water-related structures and evaluate, if necessary, re-evaluate them for potential modifications or decommissioning if required. Again, for adaptation, it's increasingly necessary to consider the unconventional water resources, such as desalinated water or reuse of wastewater, as reliable alternatives to conventional water resources for a significant number of uses. And in terms of mitigation, there are several options available in water domain, but unfortunately, these remain largely unrecognized or not considered at all. And in this report, we are highlighting what those opportunities are, both for adaptation and mitigation, using water resources as the connector. Concerning the mitigation, for example, I mentioned utilization of wastewater as an adaptation measure. Similarly, how we treat wastewater also offers a range of mitigation opportunities. First of all, the reuse of wastewater can reduce the amount of energy associated with water extraction, treatment, and transportation. Secondly, untreated wastewater is an important source of greenhouse gas emissions. Treating or reducing the organic matter within the wastewater before releasing it into the nature can significantly reduce those gas emissions. However, when we look at the available data, we see that globally, more than 80% of all wastewater is released to the environment without any sort of treatment. Lastly, the biogas produced from wastewater treatment can be recovered and used to power the treatment plant itself, for considerable savings in energy consumption. An important part of mitigation in water domain, and I would like to underline this part, is protecting and restoring wetlands, as they are large carbon sinks. And in fact, wetlands store twice as much carbon as forests. Besides, well-functioning wetlands offer multiple co-benefits, including flood and drought mitigation, water purification, and enhanced biodiversity. Now, this slide is about increasing trends in water-related disasters. Basically, at the global level, floods and extreme rainfall events have increased by more than half in this decade, and they are now occurring at a rate of 4 times higher compared to 1980s. Storms, droughts, and heat waves have increased by more than a third and being recorded twice as frequently as in 1980. Although these trends concern nearly all regions, including Europe, Central Asia, and Caucasus, the extent to which countries are affected is very much dependent on their level of socioeconomic development. In 2015, at the end of the Millennium Development Goals, almost 90% of the world's population used an improved drinking water source, and close to 70% used improved sanitation facilities. However, the current SDG 6 require a much superior level of service. Therefore, there is a greater challenge to tackle. Basically, around 2 billion people lack access to safely managed water supply, and 4 billion people lack access to safely managed sanitation. As you can imagine, significantly reducing these numbers, and we're talking about billions, reducing these numbers before 2030 requires serious commitment from the international community. And climate change is unfortunately likely to slow or undermine the progress that we have already achieved so far on SDG 6 targets and the elimination of water and sanitation related diseases. The current COVID-19 pandemic is yet another proof that patchy water supply and sanitation coverage at the country or regional level brings high risks to sustainable development and jeopardizes the well-being of all. We should not forget that while the coronavirus is getting the headlines, the water and sanitation related illnesses have long been the major silent killers. For example, when we look at the UNICEF statistics, there are about 4 billion cases of diarrhea per year, claiming lives of close to 2 million people, 1.6 million of which are children under 5. So we are all in the same boat, and only some of the regions achieving SDG 6 targets can no longer be considered as an indicator of success. In agriculture, the major challenges posed by the climate change are job security in the sector and ensuring the food security for all. In terms of jobs, agriculture accounts for close to 30% of global employment worldwide. In countries whose economies largely rely on agriculture, as much as 2/3, approximately 70% of the population work in agriculture. So loss in agricultural jobs can potentially lead to large-scale migratory movements and growing poverty. For this reason, it's critical to maintain agricultural jobs, maintain agricultural productivity, and further improve these despite climate change. Some adaptation measures could be using crop varieties that can resist shifts in temperature and more adapted to water scarcity. And mitigation in agriculture sector could be through reducing the greenhouse gas emissions through better land and water management, and perhaps by switching to renewable energy options, such as the utilization of solar energy for irrigation pumps. Now, while talking about climate change and water, Many of us primarily think about water supply and sanitation, but the reality is far more complex than that. Water lies at the center of a spider web that you see on your screens now, which is linked to all economic sectors and all aspects of life. Therefore, how one sector uses water and gets rid of its used water has strong implications on other sectors. Some people call this the integrated water resources management. Other people call it the nexus approach. Whatever you call it, both of those terminologies basically imply that water for all sectors and all sectors for water. I would like to underline a major issue that we don't usually think about, and that is the food waste and the climate change. According to FAO statistics, if food waste was a country, it would be the third largest greenhouse gas emitter. For this reason, reducing food waste could lower water and energy demand and help reduce gas emissions. When I talked about the human health, I mentioned that currently billions of people lack access to safely managed water and sanitation. And this is a crystal clear indication that water sector is underfinanced. But this problem is not necessarily a question of financing. For example, climate change funds are largely available, but most of that has been earmarked for mitigation. In 2016, mitigation made up over 90% of climate financing, but water projects consisted only around 1% of that sum. The reason is that, as the other speakers highlighted, water interventions have generally been considered from an adaptation perspective and not necessarily the mitigation, and that is a big mistake. And this is what we're trying to highlight in 2020 edition. As I mentioned earlier, there are increasing number of opportunities to integrate both adaptation and mitigation planning into water investments, making these investments and associated activities more attractive to climate financiers. What I would like to stress is that various water-related climate change initiatives can provide co-benefits that when I say we, the policy and decision makers forget about. And those co-benefits are job creation, improved public health, reduced poverty, promotion of gender equality, enhanced livelihoods, so on and so forth. So funding the water sector, both from adaptation and mitigation perspective, brings large and win-win-win benefits. What I just mentioned is the desirable scenario, but in reality, the need to address climate change through water is not being translated into concrete action. For example, the Paris Agreement requires the countries to submit their nationally determined contributions, and the analysis of the NDCs that have been submitted so far indicates that in many cases, water is recognized in terms of policy statements or broad strategies. Again, usually in terms of adaptation. But only a few NDCs actually include the intention to prepare a specific water plan. So without a specific water plan, how can you make things move? Of course, this is not possible, and this is the issue that we are seeing all around us nowadays. And while a majority of countries acknowledge water in their portfolio of actions, fewer have estimated the related costs of these actions, and even fewer have included detailed water-related project proposals. And another critical observation is that clear synergies between adaptation and mitigation opportunities through water are practically non-existent in the existing NDCs. This is my final slide. Moving forward, for the conclusion, I would like to once again highlight that combining climate change adaptation and mitigation through water is a triple win proposal. First of all, it benefits water resources management and improves the provision of water supply and sanitation services. Second, it directly contributes to combating both the causes and the impacts of climate change, including the disaster risk reduction. And third, it contributes to meeting not only the water goal SDG 6, but also the other ones on hunger, poverty, health, energy, industry, climate action, and so on. I would like to thank you all for your attention.
Well, thank you, Engin, very, very much for this succinct compared to the report itself, yet very detailed presentation. I'm sure they, tempted the audience to pick up the report and look more in detail for the areas specifically of their interest. And on this note, I would like Sonia to come in and provide us with some key messages, lessons, and recommendations to the RCs. But Sonia, considering our time also, if you could be brief and focus and possibly bring them on when the discussion actually happens. But I leave it up to you, whichever way you think is the best way to provide the message that you wanted to give in this session. So thank you very much. Sonia, your word.
Yes, good morning, everybody. I hope everybody is safe and healthy in these difficult times. My name is Sonia Köppel, and I'm the Secretary of the Water Convention. I'm working at UNECE, and UNECE was also quite involved, together with many other agencies, in the Water Development Report. For example, the regional chapter, but also some other chapters. So I will now briefly summarize the key messages and lessons and recommendations for our region. As it was already said, climate change is mainly transmitted through the water cycle. The impacts, it leads to an increase in climate variability, to temperature rise, to increasing in precipitation in the northern part of Europe, and to a decrease in precipitation in the southern part of Europe. But there are obviously regional, sub-regional difficulties according to the sub-regions. This then leads to a decrease in annual runoff in the above regions and of water availability. The climate change leads to changes in the frequency and intensity of extreme weather events such as floods and droughts, but also effects can negatively affect water quality and then cause additional challenges for water-related sectors such as agriculture, energy, and actually different part of energy is not only hydropower, but even other types of energy, ecosystem, human settlements, health, navigation, even tourism, and many other sectors which are related to water. However, the exact climate change impacts obviously depend on the regional, social, economic, and political situation. The Pan-European region, if you look at it broadly, has advanced levels in integrated water resource management and transboundary cooperation, according to the SDG indicators 6.5.1 and 6.5.2 on transboundary cooperation, for which UNICE and UNESCO are co-custodian agencies. However, the levels of implementation in Eastern Europe, Southern Europe, and Central Asia are medium to low. So there is still a significant scope for progress for these countries to improve the water management policies, institutions, and management instruments. And this can then is also crucial to, as it was said by my predecessors, to increase resilience to climate change. The neighboring countries to the European Union, who are already now starting to approximate their legislation with some of the EU directives, can benefit from the adaptive management approach of, for example, the Water Framework Directive. But another challenge, which was not so much mentioned yet, is that high and increasing levels of development and hydromorphological alterations in many basins in the region lead to high pressures on water resources and are therefore reducing the adaptive capacity. So it is recommended to restore water-related ecosystem such as wetlands, as Engin already mentioned before me. Water is also crucial for mitigation, as it was said, importantly, many mitigation measures can imply risks for freshwater systems, such as, for example, biofuels. And we therefore need an integrated approach, prioritizing measures which are beneficial for adaptation and mitigation. So a nexus approach. And such intersectoral cooperation is still very often lacking in the UNECE region, and it's therefore recommended in the report to establish national level coordination mechanisms. As Engen has said, at the global level, water is the most often cited priority sector in the nationally determined contributions which countries have to prepare for the Paris Agreement. However, if we look at the Europe and Central Asia region, there's actually very little emphasis on water in the nationally determined contributions. We hope that this will change and that the NDCs which are currently being updated or revised in 2020 can illustrate the central role of water and also the importance of transboundary cooperation in these new NDCs. And there are some good examples for including water into NDCs. A few countries in our region have already now submitted the updated NDCs, and for example, Moldova, Republic of Moldova, has included water sector quite strongly. Another challenge already mentioned is that indeed the large majority of water courses and basins in the region are shared by 2 or more countries. And transboundary and regional cooperation is therefore needed to adapt to climate change and to prevent negative impacts of unilateral adaptation measures. But on the other hand, to make adaptation more effective by sharing of data and information, and by sometimes locating the measures where they may have an optimum effect in the basin, which could be upstream or in some cases downstream. But in general, there's still a high focus on climate change activities at a national level. A few good examples exist. In Danube Basin, the Danube Commission has developed and already even updated a transboundary adaptation strategy. In the Neman Basin, which is shared by Belarus and Lithuania, the long development of a transboundary adaptation strategy has also facilitated overall transboundary cooperation. As another example, in the Dniester Basin, which is shared by the Republic of Moldova and Ukraine, several projects by UNECE, OSCE, UNDP, and UNEP have helped the countries to develop a transboundary climate change adaptation strategic framework, but also to actually prioritize and implement a number of adaptation measures already on the ground. And then these activities have increased the adaptive capacity in the basin and facilitated the entry into force of the Transboundary Dniester Treaty and the establishment of the Dniester Commission in 2018. As another example, in Central Asia, in the Chu and Talas basins, which are shared by Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, the countries have already been working together in the framework of the joint bilateral Chu-Talas Water Commission for more than a decade. Here, obviously, glacier melting is a big challenge, and we have UNECE and UNDP together with the countries have carried out basin-wide modeling of climate change impacts and the basin-wide vulnerability assessment, which then and it also implemented already some concrete adaptation measures. And this has highlighted the need for institutionally addressing climate change in the level of the Chu-Talas Water Commission by creation of a climate change subgroup. These activities were carried out or are carried out also in the framework of the UNECE Water Convention. The Convention on the Protection and Use of Transboundary Watercourses in International Lakes is an important legal and intergovernmental framework for transboundary cooperation. And it also helps countries and basins through capacity building, sharing knowledge, exchange of experience, developing guidance and projects on the ground. And this in cooperation with many other partners, including WMO, UNESCO, INBO, and many other, UNEP, UNDP, and many others. I would also like to highlight the protocol on water and health, jointly serviced by UNECE and WHO Europe, which is unique instrument aiming to prevent water-related diseases through better water management and and environmental management, and helps countries to implement the human rights to water and sanitation, and is particularly crucial in the current period. To conclude, I would like to summarize some recommendations for actions for the region. Firstly, there is still a significant lack in monitoring systems, so it's important to support monitoring and data sharing on water quantity and quality, also with regards to climate change. It is also recommended to mainstream water and transboundary cooperation issues into climate change mitigation and adaptation policies, strategies and projects, but also in other water-related sectors such as agriculture, energy, health, and so on. Then, as I mentioned, it's recommended to include water adaptation into the new NDCs and to exploit co-benefits between adaptation and mitigation options to improve coherence of adaptation and disaster risk reduction strategies. Then, very important to actually translate the policies into concrete action on the ground, including the use of more nature-based solutions and restoration of ecosystems to promote transboundary cooperation. And given that the costs of adaptation are quite high in the region, to attract funding from multiple sources, international, but also national sources and private sources. And finally, you can find a lot of additional resources from UN Water, UNECE, UNESCO, WMO, and many other agencies working on the topic. And with this, I would like to thank you for your attention.
Ms. Koppel, Sonia, if you allow me, well, thank you very, very, very much. You may not know, but I was sending out message to the people, to our people secretary saying, can we please share her presentation? And I've been told yes. So thank you very much. Truly, truly informative, addressing so many points, challenges, and most important, focusing at the end with information, recommendation to all of us, to the RCs, of what they can include, what they should include. So thank you very, very much for this truly informative presentation, which I'm sure was appreciated. And I can already see, yes, comments on the chat. A lot of appreciation for your intervention. So thank you again. And at this point, we come to our colleague, Irena, Interim Director of UNDCO for Europe and Central Asia, who we are very grateful for her coming in to moderate, possibly even say a couple of words also, but most important, to moderate the discussion, and maybe we can come up with some questions and answers. And if answers are not readily available, I think with the richness of the various comments, introductions, presentations, I'm sure the IBC and the World Water Report and the UNECE Secretary of the Water Convention and UN Water together will be able to provide whatever is needed to our RC colleagues and country teams on the ground. So Irina, it's on you now. Thank you.
Ana Luisa, thank you so much for giving me the word, and thank you so much for the speakers to be so concrete and really giving us so much, not only information, but also food for thought. How is it that we on the ground as country teams, how we can push the water agenda in the context of climate change. So, but I will not waste time. I will go straight into the discussion, which I think will there will be many questions. I would, when I look at the chat, maybe I will ask first Brian, if Brian could come forward. Brian is RC in Albania, please.
Yeah, hi, good morning everybody, and thank you for all of this. Thanks, Irena. Actually, I'm plagiarizing Elena. Elena had to leave the meeting, but her comment, and I saw a few others support it, was that we're all in the midst, of course, working full time on the preparation of socioeconomic recovery programs, and specific ideas that are short term. I mean, we listened to the presentations, they were great, thank you, but specific ideas for our region that can be done in the short term would be very welcome, because we could insert them into the pillars. And if you could sort of identify, which pillar you think it might go into, that would be super. That would be super helpful, because we're looking for ideas. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian. Maybe let's go straight to Cezine. She had some comment, but maybe Cezine, you can elaborate a little bit.
Well, I was just seconding what Elena and Brian had said. I think it would be extremely useful if we could get some input for our socioeconomic framework papers. We're in the process of finalizing ourselves, and while the input should also include some potential indicators that we could monitor with regard to COVID, that would help us look into the trends, if that makes sense, as a statement. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Cezine. And then Gulam had his hand up. Gulam, please.
Yes.
In Azerbaijan. Can you always introduce yourself so that the others know where you are?
Thank you, Rena, for organizing this. Gulam Isakzai, the RC in Azerbaijan. No, I wanted to thank all the presenters for a very interesting and informative presentation. I must admit that we hear so much about water, but we really don't understand its linkages and connections and so forth. I just wanted to comment on two aspects of the presentation and hear how you can support us. One, absolutely on its integration in the NDC, now under the decade of actions, and also many countries have been requested to upgrade their NDC level. So we'd be curious to know how we could bring that to some realization in terms of engaging with the government and tools and other resources. And secondly, I think for us, the other important aspect is the transboundary. I'm glad to hear that that's been really with some concrete example, because in the Caucasus, this is an issue that has been overlooked, especially when it comes to the 3 countries in the South Caucasus. And I know that this was very focused on climate change and environment, but the water linkage to conflict, and whether this could be used as a way to engage on development issues. I had a conversation with the Minister of Environment a while back, almost a few months ago, and he did bring very openly this issue of the transboundary water issue, that in particular with Georgia, and requested UN support, especially looking at also the legal part of it, the legal aspects of. So I think in this area, if we can do some more research and give us some more guidance and support, that would be much appreciated. So just wanted to highlight those very concrete area of this presentation. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Gulam. Before going to Ingeborg, maybe I would ask the speakers if you have any responses, especially what would be your short-term recommendations that can flow into the socio-economic assessments that are now being done in all the country teams, and then from Gulam, how to address the cross-boundary issues. So are there any speakers who would like to respond?
Elena, ADG, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. You've raised quite some interesting points, and I want to sincerely thank all of you for sharing with us your ideas and thoughts. We look forward to working with you. UNESCO hosts a program which is called the PCCP from potential conflict to cooperation potential. This program actually promotes what is called water diplomacy or hydro diplomacy across shared river basins. And we have developed long-standing partnerships with other agencies also in this particular domain. And we look forward to working with you on this, especially as the region does host a number of different basins which are shared. We are currently managing the Transboundary Water Cooperation collaboration with a number of other agencies. We also work very closely with UNECE, and we would be pleased to share with you some of the information and data we have in your region on transboundary cooperation and conflict resolution in terms of what is called today the hydro diplomacy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So there are a lot of opportunities to connect to you. Who was next? Somebody wanted to make a comment?
Irena, this is Engin from UNESCO World Water Assessment Program, if I may. Now, the interventions and the questions asked, they are all very relevant. And especially, I would like to address the one about short-term solutions. Well, that's a difficult one to tackle. I mean, in water domain, short-term might imply from a number of years to a decade. But I don't know if the person who asked the question was thinking about the same time frame. But basically, what I would like to highlight is that when it comes to climate change, many policy and decision makers are in a dilemma. They say that if climate change is uncertain and its impacts are uncertain, how can you expect us to make financial commitments? And in the World Water Development Report series, not only in 2020 edition, but in earlier series, we touched upon on this dilemma. And what we are saying is that addressing the climate change is not a simple matter. And from baby steps to large infrastructure investments, there are a number of things that can be done. But for those policy and decision makers who hesitate making those financial commitments, they might at least consider some no regret or low regret approaches. What is a no regret approach? A no regret approach is, for example, instead of creating a new infrastructure, first focus on improving the existing infrastructure. And when we are talking about water supply and sanitation and the related infrastructure, the policy and decision maker in water domain or at the higher level, at the national level, might consider first reducing the leakages and start maintaining the existing infrastructure in a better way. And no matter what happens, whether climate change aggravates or climate change for a particular country brings benefits, those no regret to low regret solutions, first of all, they are very low in terms of financial commitments, and at the end, the benefits that you get is quite considerable. So this is something, an idea that I would like to bring to the attention of the audience. This could be a short-term solution, but then other short-term solutions exist. For example, changing the mentality. What I highlighted in my presentation and what the other speakers underlined, making sure that everybody understands water is not an isolated sector. Water is an entity which brings all the sectors together. This is the thread which connects all the sectors and important to achieve the SDGs in the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that that gave good highlights. What can be done? What can be recommended? Also to go local. and to look at what locally is possible to do. I think that's already a good input. Then I would go to Ulrika because she might have to leave. So,
Irina, if I may add something from UNECE side,
yes, please.
or
But
I can come later.
Go to Ulrika because she will have. Maybe I ask Ulrika to speak first, and then
okay,
you
and
can
then after.
answer,
That's
Sonja.
fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay, Ulrika, please.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Ulrika, I'm the RC and DC in Kosovo. And I would like to have 2 points. One, to reinforce the point that was already raised by Brian and also the reflection of the previous speaker in terms of the short to medium term interventions, let's say. And this is particularly important because all UNCTs at this moment are working on an integrated UN response to mitigate socioeconomic impacts. And part of that is obviously to integrate elements of building back better. And we are, and including in Kosovo, we are really sort of grappling a little bit of how to integrate the environment, let's say, dimension here. And these are typically sort of plans and responses from 6 to 18 to 24 months, but not longer. But we see, for example, water, when it comes to protecting people, putting people first, but also the health dimension, access to clean water and access to water is, of course, an essential dimension of mitigating the spread of the COVID. So I think these are some of the concrete things that we are looking for. And because, at the country level, it's sort of challenging to have those concrete ideas. And so I just want to second what Brian and others have been saying. And also I understand that, of course, sometimes the trade-off, seems to be much higher than actually what it is in order to respond quickly while looking at climate change mitigation at the same time. But my second point is also, and more generally, or actually more specifically in the context of Kosovo, I really look forward to a strengthened cooperation here. We are working on our cooperation framework at this time, finalizing it this year. And Kosovo is challenging, it's not a UN member state. So of course with UNESCO, with UNECE is a challenge. But environment is a huge concern here. And we know that environment, as the virus, knows no boundaries. And I'm just, putting my call out there to look forward to enhanced cooperation in the very near future. Thank you very much. And thanks for a very informative session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ulrika. So now let's go to Sonja, please.
Yeah, thank you very much for your comments and questions. With regards to specific short-term ideas for the socioeconomic frameworks papers, I believe, like Engen already said, there are some low and no regret measures which could be put in place, such as in addition to what you already said, also, for example, water saving measures, water efficiency measures, communication measures to raise the importance of water to the population, and very importantly, also nature-based solution and ecosystem restoration, some of which can be done in a rather short time frame. In addition, as it was just mentioned from Kosovo side, for example, obviously water is very important now with regards to COVID prevention and future recovery and response. And it's often a problem that not all population groups have adequate access to water and safe water and sanitation. And in this regard, I would like to mention again the protocol on water and health, which I have already briefly mentioned earlier on, in which a number of tools have been developed by WHO Europe and UNECE. For example, an equity assessment scorecard to help identify vulnerable groups and implement then concrete measures which help them to gain access to water and sanitation, including now in this situation. And if there's the time, maybe WHO colleagues could add on this later on. Then there were questions with regards to indicators to monitor, and here I would like to make reference to obviously the SDG indicators, to the water-related SDG indicators, where UN Water also plays a coordinating role with the contribution of many other agencies. For example, you might have a look at the SDG6 data portal, which UN Water has put in place. Finally, there were questions with regards to water-related conflicts, and certainly this is an issue in the region, since most water resources are shared. And as you may know, UNECE, together with OSCE, has been working with Georgia and Azerbaijan to develop a transboundary agreement on the Kura Basin, and we would be happy to discuss further with the resident coordinators of Azerbaijan and Georgia how to move further on this. And with regards to Kosovo, Kosovo has been included in the DRIN Basin Cooperation, where actually just in April now the strategic action program for the DRIN Basin was signed. So which shows that transboundary cooperation can happen even in times of the current COVID crisis and lockdown. Yeah, thank you very much. And then finally, we would be happy to provide more information on the Water Convention, which also helps countries to work together, and most of the countries in the UNECE region are parties to the convention.
Thank you so much, Sonia. You have now opened a lot of topics for the country teams to get in touch with you, because this is a lot of information which was not readily available, and so now I think that there is a lot that can be done cross boundaries, but also all cross boundary topics that we address have to be in the framework of government cooperation. And as you have already assured that there is government cooperation, I think that we would be enhancing fertile ground already. So Ingeborg, or is it Ulrika? You would have some comments?
No, this is Ulrika, it's just my email. You just don't get confused. No more comments. Thank you. I was just appreciating the River Drain initiative. Yes. It's an excellent initiative of how cross-boundary water initiatives actually can take place very effectively. Thank you. Over.
Thank you. Yeah, and then connecting to Sonia, I think one can then see what else can the country team do to enhance these existing initiatives. We have hands up from Natalia, and I unfortunately cannot see who else has a hands up.
Fiona McLooney.
Yes, now I see Fiona. Let's go to Fiona, please.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me. I'm so glad you mentioned the Drin River Basin, because that was going to be my point, because that is a very important transboundary water resource for the Western Balkans, and it's Albania, Kosovo, Montenegro and North Macedonia around that transboundary water resource. But if you look back at support for the development or management of that transboundary water resource, it has also included support from GIZ and also World Bank. So I suppose my question stroke point, because it's probably a big point, is how the work that the UN does on water management links to the other entities and actors in the region. And then there's also a lot of issues around defence of waterways in the Western Balkans. So we have this Defending the Balkans River, which is a CSO that tries to keep water routes open for natural resources purposes. And at the same time, we have a very strong hydroelectric lobby in the Balkans. So those tensions about how water is managed is also a very important point. I suppose those are more statements than questions, but these are the types of issues that probably need to come into our CCAs, and they're probably and it will be there that, for example, Montenegro would be seeking support from someone to bring that in as we develop that over the rest of the year. And I think we talk amongst ourselves about issues of peace building between countries. So if there's a space to sort of flag the opportunities for water diplomacy, then maybe we should also look to develop that. But I also wanted to add one point to that question about socio-economic plan and the immediate measures. I don't know if we have the analysis, but in many countries, they're talking about how the places that were most affected by COVID were those places that were also had overcrowded and poor housing. And we certainly saw community transmission in areas of poor housing in the Montenegro context. And areas of poor housing are also associated with those with poor water and sanitation. So that might be actually an entry point to spatially defined urgent sort of upgrading projects that might come through our plans. So that's my contribution. I don't know if anyone wants to comment on that, but thank you very much for the presentation, and bye.
Thank you so much, Fiona. We have Natalia had her hand up. Unfortunately, I see it only now. Is it still relevant, Natalia?
Yes, Irena, if possible.
Yes, please.
Good morning or good afternoon, colleagues, and thank you, Irena, for giving me the floor. And I would like to add, my name is Natalia, and I'm the Regional Director of the International Telecommunications Union for the CIS region. And thank you for putting this webinar and inviting us as well. I found it extremely informative and engaging. And indeed, the climate issues are also tackled from the technology side by the ITU, and several speakers have mentioned the importance of monitoring and data collection, data gathering, and using this data for the further policy decisions. And I would just like to give a very brief information on the project that we are now working on in Kyrgyzstan, especially aimed to monitor and collect data on the mountainous glaciers in Kyrgyzstan that are impacting the water supply in Central Asia region as a whole. And specifically this project, or the first stage of this project, aims at developing information systems with decision-making support in the monitoring of ecological conditions, availability and rational use of natural resources, and as I mentioned, specifically aiming the glaciers, using the spatial data infrastructure. And we also plan to work on creating the metadata archives of data to study the ecological state of the regional natural resources. This is being done together with the national partners, i.e. the Telecommunication Administration in Kyrgyzstan and the Institute for Electronics and Telecommunications. But this project is much broader in its scope, and we would be very much open to partner and to discuss this more with UNEP, with UNESCO, and with your offices in the region, in Central Asia, to discuss how we can synergize these concrete projects into the broader framework of the work done by other UN agencies and by the IBC in general. So I would be happy to connect with colleagues to discuss further on opportunities to expand and to make use of the data collected within this concrete project. It will be deployed starting June to August, and then we'll be working on the follow-up stages. So I think it's a very timely topic to bring to attention of all of you. Thank you so much, Irena.
Thank you so much, Natalia. And this is demonstrating how all agencies have something to contribute with their specific technical expertise. And when we pull all of this together on the country level, that we can really have an impact on government policies and have a very informed discussion and advice with governments how to move forward. So thank you so much for this. Shamila, you had the hand up.
No, simply only to say thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. We look forward to working with all of you, and we are here to also to assist with the IBC and be part of this platform. we'll be delighted to join up and make available to you all the tools that we have at your disposal. Thank you, and thank you for organizing such a meeting. I need to go to another meeting, but it's been a pleasure. I've learned much from you, and thank you for this excellent opportunity. Let's all work together as one UN. As somebody said, we are one UN. So thank you.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful closing remarks. I don't have any more hands up. I think the RCs, they have spoken for a whole group of RCs. So I think there is a lot of information that you have provided, a lot of food for thought. So now the country teams know with whom to connect on what. So so thank you very much, and I would then give the word back to Bruno, and I think all the speakers really, it has been very informative, and I think you will now have a lot of communication from country teams to you, because it has triggered a lot of new thinking. So thank you so much, and Bruno, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Irena, and thanks, colleagues, for, before I go back as well to Ana Luisa, thanks a lot for an excellent webinar. Really, on my side, I've learned really a lot, and I've been not surprised, but happily struck by the commonality and the common sense of questions coming from the UN country teams, from the RC. I think we've got marching orders here for our IBC related to the socioeconomic assessments, and we really know now what is needed from their side. We try to provide it as a group. I really think this was an important moment in our cooperation, and on the topic which is central, as we heard all throughout, because it has dimensions of socioeconomic development, it has dimensions of health, it has dimensions of transboundary aspects, and so on and so on. So really, really thanks a lot to all, and back to Ana Luisa.
Thank you, Bruno. Just before I come in and conclude, I see that Sonia has her hand up. Sonia, is that purposeful or not? If it is, please come in.
Yes, thank you very much. I just wanted to react to one of the earlier comments regarding the cooperation with other agencies. In the particular Drin Basin, we are cooperating with GIZ and World Bank, but it is fully true that there are obviously many different agencies within the UN system and outside working on water and transboundary water issues, and the UN Water brings them all together, which is a very important platform. And I would also like to mention, actually, that, as you may have heard, in February last year, the Executive Committee of the UN had a discussion about water conflicts, and a number of decisions were taken to further study water-related conflicts, to assess the UN system's capability to address these issues, and also, for example, to further promote development of agreements and to promote the water conventions. But I think this is actually not so much known necessarily even within the UN system, and it might be interesting to share, including when now some of the follow-up activities are being developed. Finally, to conclude, I would like to also thank very much from UNECE side for all your comments, participation, and questions, and we remain ready from the Water Convention Secretariat, but also other parts of UNECE to support resident coordinators, UN country teams, and to disseminate the findings of the report, as well as to assist concretely with any questions and requests with regards to water and climate and beyond that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sonia. Engin, I see that you've raised your hand. I would like to give you the word, but I would ask you that you be extremely brief because I need to conclude, and I've got another meeting in about 5-10 minutes, and I sort of need to get my hat on, on another channel. So please go ahead.
Anna-Luisa, thank you very much. First of all, thank you and all your colleagues, all your team, the participants for making this webinar happen. This was really very fruitful, very collaborative, and I look forward to, on behalf of my team, I look forward to similar webinars happening in the near future. We would be more than happy to participate and engage in preparations. Now, while I was listening to all the comments from the floor, one observation I made was that majority of those colleagues who took the floor were females. And from a male perspective, this is in fact the good news in the sense that the voice of women is usually lower in the water domain, and seeing that many female colleagues taking active role, active participation in discussions and country programming and directing the national authorities in the right way, I felt the need to highlight one particular issue, and the ADG Science, she highlighted this earlier in the webinar. As the World Water Assessment Program, we consider ourselves the pioneer when it comes to gender-related issues in water domain. In fact, close to 50% of the world's population is women, and the hard reality is that women, unfortunately, do not have much to say when it comes to how water resources are managed, how water resources are used. And consequently, sex desegregated data in water domain is very scarce. So with this as the starting point, starting from 2007, we initiated a particular work on sex desegregated data collection in water domain. And we have created a number of guidelines and a number of indicators that can be utilized in any regional context. I'm not trying to say that the guidelines that we have created is perfect. It's far from being that. But if any of the country teams, if any of the regional coordinators are interested in learning from us, learning from our gender experience, we would be more than happy to share the indicators, the data collection methodology, so on and so forth. With this, thank you very much.
Thank you, again. I think if I have to conclude, there are 2 points that I would like to bring. Is first, from the co-chair's perspective of this IBC, we are very much happy to see such interest from the country teams and the RCs in having been part of this webinar, and the importance of us organizing others in future to bring to you information that you not only feel that it's relevant, but it also allows you to know what's out there. Because the other point that I wanted to raise that I think is very important, after I heard the question and the comment of my regional director colleague from ITU, is that in the country teams, I'm sure you all share information because you're there. You're living together, you're part of an office environment, or at least there is a social, if not just professional exchange. With us non-resident agencies in some of these locations, we have a lot of information. We do provide a lot of information. We know that there are a lot of information, but sometimes we don't have that opportunity on a day-to-day basis to say, hey, what about this and what about that, as we're having right now, which I think highlights the importance of the IBC initiative from our UN regional coordination mechanism. Has existed before. and it continues to exist, and it only highlights how important it is. It also shows that when you have different co-chairs from different agencies bringing together different knowledge and background and modus operandi, because we each bring our own culture also, not individual, but organizational culture, how absolutely fruitful that exchange can be. And last but not least, the IBC and all the colleagues that were part of this webinar today will be happy to get together after this and put together a way to ensure that all this information that was exchanged, from the presentations to the contacts to the chairs to all the reports, the data that was just mentioned on women, that it all is available to all of you to use as you need, and available to answer questions of anything that it provokes in your minds or on your needs. Last but not least, I absolutely want to conclude by thanking the time, not only during this webinar, but also the time that was put in the background for its preparation, particular to Olcay for being available with Shamila, but in particular Engin and Sonia for putting together a lot of the background work to make such, it's so difficult sometimes to speak less and say more than the other way around. So I know a lot of work went in. And last but not least, our great colleagues in UNECE and in UNESCO and UNEP, who are providing support to us, the directors who are chairing this IBC. So thank you to all. And and Irina, one of our collaborators, the woman who sometimes we'd say, we need to round up the troops, please round them up for us. So I'm sorry for not putting you in that first group, but we would not be able to have done this today without you. So thank you everybody for your time, and see you next time. Same channel, not same time nor same day, but definitely same channel. Bye-bye.
Bye, Annalisa. Thank you very much. Thank you. Stay safe. Bye.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Everybody
Bye.
stay
Thank
safe.
you.
Bye.
Stay safe.
Thank you.
Healthy.
Bye-bye.
Thanks to all.
Goodbye.